2 years of darkness, Afghanistan's tragic descent under the Taliban reign. As the sun set on that fateful day 2 years ago, the world was watching in a mixture of horror and helplessness as the Taliban seized full control of Afghanistan on 15 August 2021. What followed was not just a political shift, but a descent into darkness that suffocated the hopes, dreams, and fundamental rights of an entire nation. This date marks a sad milestone in the history of a nation that once dreamed of progress, freedom, and equality. As we reflect upon these 2 years, the actual cost of the Taliban's brutal reign becomes chillingly clear. The Taliban have cast aside the hopes of countless women, relegating them of a life of subjugation and fear. Their iron grip on Afghanistan has been marked by a series of draconian laws and oppressive measures, particularly targeting the rights and freedom of women. A land that was once glimpsed a future of progress and inclusivity was abruptly plunged into an era where women were rendered invisible, stripped of their rights to education, work, and even movement. The streets that once resonated with laughter and chatter of women going about their daily lives were now eerily silent, stifled by medieval dress codes and rigid prohibitions. The Taliban's blatant disregard for gender equality became glaringly apparent in their governance structure. An inclusive male regime, an inclusive mullah dominated, emerged, raising any semblance of diversity or representation. Their dismissal of educated professionals and bureaucrats showcased a disdain for intellectual prowess, giving rise to a vacuum of expertise in the government. The absence of female judges, teachers, civil servants, and bureaucrats in their administration spoke volumes of their dogmatic and regressive approach. The relentless assault on human rights is a stain that should mar the conscience of the world. Amid the shadows cast by this oppressive regime, stories of anguish and suffering emerged. More than 300 women found themselves imprisoned for daring to protest against the inhuman laws, and dozens of journalists are behind the bar and behind the bars. Reports of sexual assault and human rights violation within their jails painted a horrid picture of a system devoid of empathy. In a guise of justice, the Taliban resorted to torture to extort coerced confessions, further eroding any semblance of fairness. Security, too, took a grim of turn. The Taliban's ascent led to partial stabilization, but the vacuum left by the collapse of the Republic government paved the way for ISIS to fill the void. The spate of attacks revealed the fragility of the security apparatus under the Taliban rule. The military resistance against this new security highlighted a first determination to reclaim the country from its oppressor. Panjshir province and Darab and other parts emerged as symbols of defiance against the Taliban's oppressive rule. Their residents, along with others, refused to bow to the regime's tyranny, resulting in an unjust imprisonment and harsh punishments. The Taliban's dubious connections with extremist groups, including Al-Qaeda, the Pakistani Taliban, and other regional military groups, only exacerbate fears of return of a breeding ground for terrorism, shattering the illusion of a safer Afghanistan. Even the Taliban's claim of fighting opium cultivation and drug trafficking proved hollow. While they purportedly banned opium cultivation, evidence suggests that high-ranking commanders were directly involved in the drug deal. This hypocrisy exposed the regime driven by self-interest and greed, further destabilized the nation's fragile economy. Economically, Afghanistan's descent was equally stark. The departure of vibrant business people, investors, capital, coupled with excessive taxes, choked life out of commerce. Sanctions on banking and restricted money transactions severed Afghanistan from global trade networks. The so-called aid packages only masked the grim reality, allowing the Taliban to persist under the guise of stability. Hidden financial transactions and covert support only serve to perpetuate regime that has failed its people. Diplomatically, Afghanistan became a pariah nation or a pariah country on the global stage. The Taliban regime stood alone, recognized by no government or international organization. The few remaining embassies in Kabul became a lifeline for humanitarian aid, a stark reminder of Afghanistan's isolation. Its isolation is palpable, a result of a regime that has severed ties with the world and ushered in a reign of intolerance. So, what should be the way forward? The way forward is a challenging path that can be paved with cooperation, dialogue, and commitment to human rights. The international community engagement with diverse Afghan voices could be the catalyst for change. The international community must look beyond the surface, engaging with a broader spectrum of voices, including Afghan women, representatives, politicians, youth, and civil society organizations. Direct aid distribution pressure for change must be guiding principle, steering Afghanistan to a more inclusive future. A comprehensive political framework inclusive of all the stakeholders is the cornerstone of a brighter future. Pressuring the Taliban to relinquish its grip on power and adhering to Doha Agreement is also imperative. The resumption of intra-Afghan talks that halted the enforcement of the 2004 constitutional rights and the formation of a united front against the oppression are essential steps in reclaiming Afghanistan's destiny. Echoes of the past, notably the Bonn Conference in 2001, remind us that history can guide the way forward. The United Nations must pave the way for a broad-based political strategy that reflects Afghanistan's diversity and aspirations. The media's role in truthfully depicting the horrors of the Taliban rule is vital in mobilizing global support for change in Afghanistan, in its people, in its future. As the 2-year mark of the Taliban's brutal rule passes, the world must not forget the suffering endured by the Afghan people. The legacy of these 2 years is a testament to the resilience of a people, the depth of their suffering, and the urgency of the action. This is a moment that demands unity, action, and unwavering belief that Afghanistan can rise from the shadows and reclaim its place among the nations of the world. Let us stand united against oppression, guided by the principles of justice, equality, and human rights. Thank you.